to be told here," Mayor Nicole LaChapelle said of the event. That something was the 50th anniversary of Riverside Industries, which has recently covered the community with sunflowers, both real and on seemingly ubiquitous signs, in celebration of their continued work providing habilitation, employment options, and skills development to adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities. When started as a tiny manufacturing operation with 5 clients, has now expanded to provide employment and life enrichment activities to more than 270 people and their families in Franklin, Hampshire, and Hampden counties. Charlene Gentis, the organization's president and CEO, said the sunflower was a fitting image for Riverside Industries and the region it serves because of the flower's hundreds of seeds surrounded by bright yellow petals. "The community supports and embraces us, and we are part of the community," she said in a statement. "Sunflowers are big, happy, and beautiful. They embrace so many qualities of community." Over the years, the organization has evolved to continue to make sure those it serves are always cared for and respected, LaChapelle said. "Everybody should have that." The atmosphere on Sunday was lively, though most of that energy was concentrated on the periphery of Millside Park, where concertgoers clustered under the shade of trees as the sun blazed above. "This is a great venue, and it's an amazing organization," Lena Marimoto of Wendell said. She was sitting behind the New City Brewery tent, having just finished playing on stage as part of the Mountain River Taiko Drummers. There were, however, some brave souls who unfolded their chairs right in the middle of the park. "I'm soaking up these last rays of summer," said Allison Childs of West Hatfield. "There's not many that are left." Kids played on the playground. Adults sought refreshment from tents doling out New City and abandoned building beer, and music lovers enjoyed the sounds of artists, including Young at Heart Chorus, Stompbox Trio, and Fat, as well as the Taiko Drummers. Riverside Industry began when the village of Leeds donated 2 abandoned school buildings to the organization in 1968, and throughout the 70s provided residential services and work opportunities to clients, many of whom were deinstitutionalized from Belchertown State School and returned home. The organization expanded in 1976 with the purchase of 1 Cottage Street in East Hampton, where they are now located. "It's an opportunity for people to fulfill themselves in a work environment," said Silas Kopp, who sits on the organization's board and helped to organize the concert on Sunday. "I think that's something we all want." Kopp said, "The moment that really touched him during the event was when some Riverside Industries participants got up on stage to sing with Young at Heart Chorus. He said he expected to see a bit of stage fright, but the singers didn't seem to have any. They stepped up to the plate and sang out loud and clear," he said. Singer-songwriter Seth Glyer eventually took to the stage to sing his song, Love is a Language, which is about his older brother Jamie, who was nonverbal and on the autism spectrum, and passed away in October of 2015. Glyer thanked Riverside Industries for the neurodiversity they bring to his town. "Waiting on a sign, praying to break through when nothing else can speak to you," Glyer said. "Love is a language we hang on to." The next article is titled Generating Election Fever. Congressional Democrats state their case at Northampton Town Hall by Michael Connors. Northampton, as the battle over the federal midterm election enters its final stretch, Following a heated primary season, Republican and Democrats alike are racing across the country to secure ideological influence in some of the nation's highest offices. On Saturday afternoon, U.S. Representatives Jim McGovern, Democrat from Worcester, and Pramila Jayapal, Democrat of Seattle, attempted to do just that, as they held a joint town hall meeting at the First Churches of Northampton, organized by the Progressive Democrats of America. Since 2016, Republicans have had a majority in both houses of Congress. For McGovern, the upcoming election couldn't be more important. Dubbing it the most consequential of his life, McGovern stressed the importance of voters showing up at the polls on Election Day. People say to me, with all that's going on in Washington, with all of the stuff that Trump is doing and saying, isn't it maddening? Isn't it frustrating? And the answer is, yes, it is, both, McGovern said. They asked, don't you get tired? Don't you want to give up and do something different and just pull the shade on all of this politics? And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. McGovern enlisted Jayapal, a rising progressive Democrat from Washington State, to help make the case for energizing voters to pull the lever. As a relatively new member of the House and vice chairwoman of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Jayapal stressed the importance of active participation in these increasingly polarizing political times. It isn't just about the horrendous policies that are coming out of the White House, Jayapal said. It's about the shattering of norms. It's about the shattering of human decency. Northampton Mayor David Narkowitz, alongside recently elected lawmakers Joe Comerford and Lindsay Sabadosa, gave opening remarks to the audience of almost 200 inside the church. Emma's Revolution, a songwriting group from Oakland, California, sang a song of protest before the floor was opened up to the two representatives. From 4 to 6 p.m., the two congressional colleagues discussed the status of a variety of progressive policies, while also stressing the importance of electing of a majority Democratic Congress in the fall. As ranking member of the House Rules Committee, McGovern would become chairman of that same committee if Democrats gain a majority in the House. If that happens, McGovern pledged to at least bring single-payer health care to debate on the House floor, something Republicans refuse to consider. We believe that every person in this country ought to have first-class health care. I don't care whether you're Donald Trump or the poorest person in the world. We all deserve to have health care. It is a right and not a privilege, McGovern said. Jayapal co-founded the Medicare for All caucus in the House, of which she, McGovern, and 75 other representatives are a part. She said that although the Affordable Care Act was a step in the right direction, there needs to be a higher goal for the future. It is about educating our colleagues. It is about making sure we have a real pathway to get a single-payer health care system, because health care is not something that should only be available to the rich. It is something everyone should have, Jayapal said. Also on the agenda for progressive Democrats, Jayapal said it is to look at the overreaching problems of student debt in the country. No young person should be considering whether or not they go to college because they would have $60,000 in debt, she said. It is a huge drain on our economy. Halfway through the town hall, Jayapal and McGovern took questions from members of the audience on topics such as Social Security, college affordability, and campaign finance. Participants from a Western Massachusetts chapter of Code Pink pressed McGovern on looking into whether he takes campaign contributions from weapons manufacturers like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. The questionnaires noted that Jayapal had already previously pledged to divest from contributions from private defense companies. I'm not sure how much I get from defense, but I'll look. They are probably getting a low return on their investment because I vote against these defense bills all of the time, McGovern said, explaining his staunch resistance on growing militarism. I think money is a corrupting influence on campaigns. We will meet after the campaign and look at this. At the end of taking questions, the two representatives once again thanked the audience for participating, while also stressing for a final time how crucial they believed it was for Democrats to take back the House once again. After the event, Jack Gelt, 79, of Northampton, said he was happy to see the members of Congress come and listen to their constituents. The demographic here was so interesting. There were so many young people, Gelt said. It's good to hear our leaders say that protest isn't enough. You need to organize to get any progress made. In the area police news from Amherst, police responded to a North Pleasant Street fraternity at 11:29 a.m. Wednesday, shortly after a man was seen urinating from the balcony in full view of people at a neighboring building. Members of the fraternity were warned about the behavior. Next item. A 19-year-old Amherst man was arrested at 2:23 a.m. Friday on Valley Lane on a charge of breaking and entering during the nighttime, police said. Next item. 5 residents at a Main Street home are being issued $300 tickets for violating the town's noise bylaw after police twice responded to the home for loud yelling from the porch at 1:22 a.m. and 1:38 a.m. Friday. The shouting, which also included obscenities directed at police officers, continued even when the tenants went inside. The next item, Dylan Xavier Sleece, 24, of Bernardston, was arrested at 12:38 a.m. Friday on North Pleasant Street at Governor's Drive on charges of disorderly. Robert James Pelletier, 32, of Westfield, was arrested on Wednesday on and other products from the CVS pharmacy on Main Street. The next item, Devon Therese Smith, 36, of Springfield, was arrested Friday at 1:42 a.m. on King Street on 2 drug possession charges and 1 possession with intention to distribute charge, according to police. Smith was a passenger in a car stopped for not having a valid inspection sticker, and an officer noticed inside what looked like it could be drugs or drug paraphernalia, leading to a search of the vehicle and location of drugs, according to police. And that concludes today's Hampshire Gazette. This is Irene at TIC, and thank you for listening.
You've just heard stories from the Daily Hampshire Gazette. Please stay tuned for more programming. Dear listener, we have some good news to share with you. The Talking Information Center is expanding its programming lineup, and for the first time, we will be offering a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week schedule. This means that we will no longer be including any repeats in our regular broadcast schedule. We have added many daily local newspapers to fulfill the requests of listeners across the state. And while all the programs we currently air will still be available, you may notice that many of them have changed the times when they air to accommodate the expansion. If you have access to the internet, we always invite you to visit our website, ticnetwork.org. There, you can listen to your favorite archived shows at a time that is most convenient for you. The new expanded TIC schedule will begin airing Monday, September 17th. If you would like a copy of the new program schedule mailed to you in either large print format or on audio CD, please give us a call at 781-834-4400. That's 781-834-4400. Thank you.
Jill, why don't you tell the class what you did this weekend?
Well, my dad and I went in search of some magical minnows and found a zillion of them in the stream from our lookout rock. Then my sister and I escaped from an evil slug king and went back to my super twig fort for safety. Then we told stories till it got dark, and the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Where were you, Jill?
We went to the forest. It's not that far away.
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
This is the Talking Information Center, a window to independence in Massachusetts through volunteers reading over 250 national and local publications in your community. For comments, suggestions, and more information, call us at 781-834-4400 or online at ticnetwork.org. Thank you for listening. WVBF AM Middleborough, WRRS FM Middleborough, WRRS LP Pittsfield, WLLO LP Londonderry, WVAO LP Athol.
Coming up next from the Talking Information Center, news stories from the Springfield Republican.
Hello and welcome to the Massachusetts Reading Network. Here's the news from the Springfield Republican for Monday, September 17th. We'll start with this: breaking families. Lucinda Fisher's son is in maximum security prison. Under new regulations that went into effect in March, her son is not allowed to put 5 people on his list of approved visitors. Is only allowed to put 5 people on his list of approved visitors. He can update the list every 6 months. I have a huge family. My son has siblings, Fisher said. Fisher looked at Department of Correction officials at a public hearing in Boston on Thursday. Can either of you pick 5 people you deal with on a regular basis for 6 months? She asked. Can you narrow it down to 5? Can Governor Baker narrow it down to 5? The new policies, Fisher said, seem to be geared toward breaking the families, breaking the inmates. The Department of Corrections' new visiting procedures were launched earlier this year, spurring outrage among prisoners, family members, and their advocates, and prompting 4 separate lawsuits, which are pending. The advocates say the new visitation policies make it harder for inmates to maintain relationships with their families and friends, and make it less likely they will be able to successfully reintegrate into the community. The evidence supports that efforts should be made to make visitation more open and more accessible wherever possible, said Jesse White, staff attorney for Prisoners' Legal Services of Massachusetts. Over the last year, DOC has been moving in the wrong direction on visitation, substantially restricting and reducing visitation without any rational basis. According to Prisoners' Legal Services, Massachusetts is now one of the most restrictive states in the country with regard to visitation. Until March, state prisoners could have an unlimited number of visitors during set visiting hours, days and hours. Under the new rules, they are restricted to a list of 5 to 10 visitors, depending on their security classification. The list can be updated twice a year. Prisoners can apply for exceptions to the cap only if every person on their list is immediate family and they want to add another immediate family member. Visitors must undergo a pre-authorization process. No more than 2 adults can visit a prisoner at one time. Each visitor can only receive approval to visit 1 prisoner in the system, unless the second one is an immediate family member. The Department of Corrections says the rules are meant to prevent the smuggling of contraband, including drugs. The Department of Correction is committed to protecting the safety of inmates, staff, and the public while offering inmates diverse opportunities to benefit from reentry programs that increase their chances for post-release success, said Department spokesman Jason Dobson. In response to an increase in drug and contraband-related incidents involving visitors, the department has implemented new visiting procedures and uses dogs trained to passively detect drugs as tools to address this problem. But inmates and their advocates say the policies make it harder for inmates to maintain a support system in the community. 4 lawsuits have been filed in Middlesex, Suffolk, and Worcester counties by inmates challenging the policies. Among the plaintiffs, Mary Dodd, 68, is serving a life sentence in a medium-security prison. She has 13 children, 38 grandchildren, and 28 great-grandchildren, and wants permission to have more than 8 visitors. John Stote put his ill mother on his visitors list, but she has not yet been approved, and he worries she will die before she can visit him. Vincent Rivera has family in New York and Philadelphia, so it is difficult to know who will be able to visit him and who should be included on his list. He did not submit any names in time, so he must wait several months to update his list and get any visits. Richard Brown put his girlfriend on his list, so he is unable to exceed the cap to let his entire immediate family visit. He had to leave his sister off his list. Kenneth Sequin reached his cap with his siblings and in-laws, so had to leave off his friend, who visited him monthly for 23 years. Lawsuits are challenging the caps, the infrequent list updates, the restriction on how many visitors someone can visit, and the pre-authorization process. Plaintiffs contend these provisions are arbitrary, capricious, and an exaggerated response to the DOC's purported concerns about preventing visitors from introducing drugs into the facility, attorneys from Prisoners' Legal Services wrote in one of the lawsuits. At a recent hearing called to take testimony on regulations relating to dog searches of visitors, officials from the Department of Correction instead heard complaint after complaint about the new visitation rules, even though the department had held hearings before implementing those rules. Michael Carey runs community programs for ex-offenders to help them re-enter society and also visits inmates before they are released. He was visiting 2 inmates, but is now restricted to 1. He often encourages friends and family to visit prisoners, but he said now visitors are immediately faced with barriers since lists are only updated every 6 months. Prisoners, he said, have had to make very difficult choices between family members and friends, many of whom don't live in the area and only come a couple of times a year. Karen Polito, a former corrections officer whose adult son is in prison serving a life sentence, said families testified against the new rules previously, and they went into effect anyway. It seems our comments go unnoticed since families of inmates and inmates are the only ones affected by any changes, Polito said. We understand and fully appreciate the need for security measures to prevent the introduction of illegal items, but I don't see how these changes prevent such things from happening, Polito said. Polito added, regular visits and communication are the only way to foster and nurture family bonds and community connections. It's the only way to facilitate a healthy return to the community. Mary Valerio, whose husband is in prison, said, "What has struck me most about the prisons is the absence of any humanity. To the DOC, the men are only numbers, but to us they are our husbands, fathers, brothers, sons, and family members. Valerio said family members are your partners in their successful reentry, not your enemy, and visitation should be expanded, not reduced, to lower recidivism rates. John Perry, who spent 18 years in prison, said his daughter was born 3 days after he got to prison in Walpole. As his daughter grew up, he had the opportunity to see her on family days, where they could play in the prison yard. That visit was instrumental in helping me maintain my relationship with my daughter, family, and community. It helped contribute overall to my rehabilitation, Perry said. Perry read a letter from a prisoner who asked the state to reconsider the policy. The man wrote that he has no family in New England, and his visitors travel from out of state unexpectedly whenever they are able. The new visiting policy will eliminate this from ever happening, the man wrote. Several people also spoke out against the use of dogs to search visitors, saying it could discourage visitors who are afraid or allergic to dogs, and it creates a more frightening atmosphere for visitors, including children. Carolyn Bays, a Watertown town councilor who visits a friend of a friend in solitary confinement, said the vast majority of drugs are not being smuggled in by visitors. With dog searches, she said, visits will plummet, families will suffer, and drugs will continue to make their way into prison as you focus on the wrong people. Next, Parade celebrates Puerto Rican culture. Playing some of his father's most recognized songs, Tito Puente Jr. thrilled the crowd gathered on Main Street for the 2018 Springfield Puerto Rican Parade yesterday. So happy to be here in Springfield, Massachusetts, celebrating the Puerto Rican Parade on this beautiful day, said Puente, the son of legendary musician, composer, and producer Tito Puente. This was a bit of a last-minute surprise for you all, and we are so happy to be here. The parade made its way down Main Street, starting at the corner of Wasson and Main Streets in the city's North End neighborhood, and ending on Boland Way in downtown. This year's parade theme was Puerto Rico Vive, in honor of those on the island and those who relocated to the mainland after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico on September 20th, 2017. This is 5 years in the making, said Lucilla J. Santana, chairwoman of the Springfield Puerto Rican Parade Committee, a younger generation of Latinos who took over organizing the parade in 2014. We had great weather, a wonderful crowd, and now we get ready for next year. This year the parade featured a grand marshal and 7 ambassadors, all of which marched in the parade with their families. The family of Jafet Robles marched in honor of the community leader who was killed in 2017 and was named Community Ambassador of the parade posthumously. The parade featured musical performances from Puentes and Grupo Mania and Grupo Caras, well-known Puerto Rican merengue bands. The parade has just ended with over 3 hours of music, dancing, and culture. It was an amazing day, said Victoria Ann Rodriguez, a member of the parade committee. We are super thrilled that so many people came out on this beautiful day to enjoy all the hard work we put into it, and we can't wait until next year. Let's finish up the front page of the Republican with this. Flooding fears surge as rivers rise. Wilmington, North Carolina. Catastrophic flooding from Florence spread across the Carolinas yesterday, with roads to Wilmington cut off by the epic deluge and muddy river water swamping entire neighborhoods miles inland. The risk to life is rising with the angry waters, Governor Roy Cooper declared, as the storm's death toll climbed to 16. The storm continued to crawl westward, dumping more than 30 inches of rain in spots since Friday, and fears of historic flooding grew. Tens of thousands were ordered evacuated from communities along the state's steadily rising rivers, with the Cape Fear, Little River, Lumber, Waccamaw, and Pee rivers all projected to burst their banks. In Wilmington, with roads leading in and out of the city underwater and streams still swelling upward, residents waited for hours outside stores and restaurants for basic necessities like water. Police guarded the door of one store, and only 10 people were allowed inside at a time. Woody White, chairman of the Board of Commissioners of New Hanover County, said officials were planning for food and water to be flown into the coastal city of nearly 120,000 people. Our roads are flooded, he said. There is no access to Wilmington. About 70 miles away from the coast, residents near the Lumber River stepped from their homes directly into boats floating in their front yards. River forecasts showed the scene could be repeated in towns as far as 250 miles inland as waters rise for days. Downgraded overnight to a tropical depression, Florence was still massive. But with radar showing parts of the storm over 6 southeastern states and flood worries spreading into southern Virginia and West Virginia, North and South Carolina were still in the bullseye. Halfway around the world, meanwhile, Typhoon Mangkhut barreled into southern China yesterday after lashing the Philippines with strong winds and heavy rain that left dozens dead. More than 2.4 million people were evacuated from China's southern Guangdong province ahead of the massive typhoon, the strongest to hit the region in nearly 2 decades. In North Carolina, fears of what could be the worst flooding in the state's history led officials to order tens of thousands to evacuate, though it wasn't clear how many had fled or even could. The head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Brock Long, said officials were focused on finding people and rescuing them. "We'll get through this. It'll be ugly, but we'll get through it," Long told NBC's Meet the Press. President Donald Trump said federal emergency workers, first responders, and law enforcement officials were working really hard. As the storm begins to finally recede, they will kick into an even higher gear. "Very professional," he declared in a tweet. The storm's death toll climbed to 16 when a pickup truck ran into standing water in South Carolina, and the driver lost control, hitting a tree, authorities said. 2 other people also died in storm-related wrecks, and 2 more people died from inhaling carbon monoxide from a generator in their home. Victor Merlos was overjoyed to find a store open for business in Wilmington, since he had about 20 relatives staying at his apartment, which still had power. He spent more than $500 on cereal, eggs, soft drinks, and other necessities, plus beer. "I have everything I need for my whole family," said Merlos. Nearby, a Waffle House restaurant limited breakfast customers to 1 biscuit and 1 drink, all takeout, with the price of $2 per item. Kenneth Campbell had donned waterproof waders intending to check out his home in Lumberton, but he didn't bother when he saw the Coast Guard and murky waters in his neighborhood. "I'm not going to waste my time. I already know," he said. As rivers swelled, state regulators and environmental groups were monitoring the threat from gigantic hog and poultry farms located in low-lying, flood-prone areas. The industrial-scale farms contain vast pits of animal feces and urine that can pose a significant pollution threat if they are breached or inundated by floodwaters. In past hurricanes, flooding at dozens of farms also left hundreds of thousands of dead hogs, chickens, and other decomposing livestock bobbing in floodwaters. Stream gauges across the region showed water levels rising steadily, with forecasts calling for rivers to crest yesterday and today at or near record levels. The Defense Department said about 13,500 military personnel had been assigned to help relief efforts. Authorities ordered the immediate evacuation of up to 7,500 people living within a mile of a stretch of the Cape Fear River and the Little River, about 100 miles from the North Carolina coast. The evacuation zone included part of the city of Fayetteville, population 200,000. John Rose owns a furniture business with stores less than a mile from the river. Rain-soaked furniture workers helped him quickly empty more than 1,000 mattresses from a warehouse in a low-lying strip mall. "It's the first time we've ever had to move anything like this," Rose said. "If the river rises to the level they say it's going to, then this warehouse is going to be underwater." Fayetteville city officials, meanwhile, got help from the Nebraska Task Force 1 search and rescue team to evacuate 140 residents of an assisted living facility to a safer location at a church. Rainfall totals were stunning. In Swansboro, North Carolina, nearly 34 inches of rain had fallen by yesterday afternoon, and 20 other places in North Carolina had at least 20 inches, according to the National Weather Service. Another 30 sites in North and South Carolina had at least 10 inches. Water on the Cape Fear River near Chinquapin got so high that electronic instruments used to monitor flooding quit working after it became submerged, the U.S. Geological Survey said. The same thing happened on the Trent River. Still, there was some good news. Power outages in the Carolinas and Virginia were down to about 580,000 homes and businesses, after reaching a high of about 910,000 as the hurricane plowed into the coast. Utilities said some outages could last for weeks. In Goldsboro, North Carolina, roads that frequently flood were already closed Saturday by rushing water. Dozens of electric repair trucks massed to respond to damage expected to hit central North Carolina as rainfall collected into rivers headed to the coast. Duke Energy said heavy rains caused a slope to collapse at a coal ash landfill at a closed power station outside Wilmington late Saturday. But there was no indication contamination had drained into the nearby Cape Fear River. The company initially estimated that about 2,000 cubic yards of ash were displaced at the landfill, which is enough to fill about 180 dump trucks. Next, a look at the gas explosions. Residents recall fear, flames, panic. Elizabeth Borelli was getting ready for parent-teacher night in her Lowell Public Schools classroom Thursday when her husband William called her cell phone. The 32-year-old teacher, who was 8 months pregnant, thought he was just checking in, but William's voice was frantic, full of terror and fear. Something was wrong. Borelli's mother-in-law, who lives next door to them on Emmett Street in Lawrence, turned on her stove, and flames immediately shot out. The oven exploded, William told his wife. Flames suddenly flew out of the stove, landing on Borelli's mother-in-law. With eyebrows singed, Borelli's mother-in-law escaped the home, while neighbors put out the flames inside the home with a fire extinguisher. She was okay. She's alive, Borelli said. Things can be replaced. Items can be replaced. More than 24 were left injured, and an 18-year-old Lawrence man was killed as gas explosions erupted in Lawrence, North Andover, and Andover Thursday. Borelli was one of hundreds who lined up outside the Lawrence Public Library at the Columbia Gas Complaint Center to get answers. She wanted to know if the company will reimburse her family for the damage the explosion caused and the money they spent after being evacuated from their homes for days. Borelli's family stayed with friends and family as authorities investigated the explosions, worked to restore power, and cleared homes of gas. Residents of Lawrence, North Andover, and Andover returned to their homes Sunday after power was restored. There was no gas still, a concern for Borelli as her first child is coming in November. Several people are frustrated with Columbia Gas and their slow response. Lawrence Mayor Daniel Rivera was highly critical of the company in the aftermath. The least informed and the last to act have been Columbia Gas, Rivera said during heated remarks. It just seems like there's no one in charge. They're in the weeds. Borelli believes the company could have responded better. She can cook with electricity for now, but with the new little one on the way, she is concerned about coming home with a newborn while her house has no gas and possible lingering issues. As people lined the sidewalks around the Lawrence Public Library Sunday, some volunteers handed out water. A Columbia Gas employee held up a sign with a phone number for people to lodge complaints if they didn't want to wait in line. Translators shouted instructions to help people navigate the area. Residents were told to have identification with them. Jason Garcia, a 28-year-old machinist living on Boxford Street in Lawrence, said he never wants to use his gas stove again. He got home Thursday from work and was ready to warm up some leftover rice and beans. When I turned on the stove, I heard a whoosh sound. I was lucky the igniter didn't go off, Garcia said. I am in shock. I could have died. His girlfriend and their 8-month-old son, Nathan, weren't home. Thinking gas was shut off for some reason, Garcia drove to a local market to grab a bite. The eatery had no gas either. He then learned there were explosions rocking the communities of Lawrence, North Andover, and Andover. I'm lucky I didn't die right then and there, he said. I'm afraid I'll never turn on that stove again. No gas stove for me. He has been living in a hotel since he evacuated. As Garcia waited in the line at the complaint center, he pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket. Money spent on the hotel, food, and clothes were listed. Garcia estimated he lost $1,000 just from those expenses. Governor Charlie Baker announced yesterday power was restored for roughly 15,000 residents as they returned to their North Andover, Andover, and Lawrence homes. Authorities turned off nearly 8,600 impacted meters after the Columbia Gas line explosions. People were able to return to homes by 7 a.m. Sunday after officials cleared homes of gas and restored electricity. It's been a difficult and grueling weekend for the residents of Andover, North Andover, and Lawrence, Baker said. I often say the people of Massachusetts are resilient, but this devastating situation is no exception. Baker reminded people to stay vigilant and urged residents not to turn on their gas services until further notice. If any resident smells gas in their home, they should immediately leave and call 911 from a different location. They should also call the Columbia Gas emergency number at 1-800-525-8222. Authorities from the National Transportation Safety Board said the investigation into the gas line explosions will take 12 to 24 months. Baker declared a state of emergency and brought in Eversource to handle the restoration efforts. Omaira Gonzalez was able to see her Lawrence apartment on Newton Street Saturday. It was clear of gas, so she went inside and opened the refrigerator. Everything was ruined. I decided to come over here to get whatever I needed, Gonzalez said while in line. The 43-year-old picked up her nephew Thursday and took him home. When she got to her apartment, she heard a knock on the door. Next thing I know, I have this little 10-year-old girl knocking on my door, Gonzalez said. You have to come out. The houses are exploding, the girl told Gonzalez. People outside were yelling, telling her to get out. Gonzalez scooped up her cat, Missy, and has been staying at a friend's home in North Lawrence since the explosions. Like others, she is scared to go home. I'm going back tonight. I'm still scared, she said. I live in a building that has 24 apartments, and we are told not to turn on any appliances. You never know if everyone is going to listen. And that completes the reading of the Springfield Republican from Monday, September 17th. Thank you for listening.
You've just heard news stories from the Springfield Republican. Please stay tuned for more programming.
Coming soon from the Talking Information Center, join reader Jean Scammell as she presents the book Blood Brothers, the story of strange friendship between Sitting Bull and Buffalo Bill by Deanne Stillman. The little-known story of the unlikely friendship of two famous figures of the American West, Buffalo Bill Cody and Sitting Bull, told through their time in Cody's Wild West show in the 1880s. It was in Brooklyn, New York, in 1883 that William F. Cody, known across the land as Buffalo Bill, conceived of his Wild West show, an equestrian extravaganza featuring cowboys and Indians. The idea took off. For 4 months in 1885, the Lakota chief Sitting Bull appeared in the show. Deanne Stillman unearths little-told details about the two men and their tumultuous times. Their alliance was eased by none other than Annie Oakley. When Sitting Bull joined the Wild West, the event spawned one of the earliest advertising slogans, "Foes in 76, friends in 85," referring to the Little Big Horn. Cody paid his performers well, and he treated the Indians no differently from white performers. During this time, the Native American rights movement began to flourish, but with their way of life in tatters, the Lakota and others availed themselves of the chance to perform in the Wild West. When Cody died in 1917, a large contingent of Native Americans attended his public funeral. An iconic friendship tale like no other, Blood Brothers is truly a timeless story of people from different cultures who cross barriers to engage each other as human beings. Blood Brothers, the story of the strange friendship between Sitting Bull and Buffalo Bill by Deanne Stillman will air for 12 episodes on the Book Hour beginning September 21st and ending October 8th.
This is the Talking Information Center, a window to independence in Massachusetts through volunteers reading over 250 national and local publications in your community. For comments, suggestions, and more information, call us at 781-834-4400 or online at ticnetwork.org. Thank you for listening. WVBF AM Middleborough, WRRS FM Middleborough, WRRS LP Pittsfield, WLLO LP Londonderry, WVAO LP Athol.
Coming up next from the Talking Information Center, news stories from the Fitchburg Sentinel and Enterprise.
Hi, this is Maureen. It's Monday, and I am reading the Sentinel and Enterprise. 100 years ago, a killer emerged, a passion for karate helping kids. Woman is accused, Kavanaugh goes public. Ballot by ballot, votes tallied as deadline nears, return to the hunt. Flooding. Fears surge as Florence raises rivers. $2.5 million bond for border control. In Texas. Now to read about A Taste of Greece in Fitchburg. Entertaining the crowd at the annual Greek festival held at the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church in Fitchburg Saturday was the Holy Trinity Flogger Dancing Group. Dancing with the group are from left. Liam Giankis of Leominster. There was Zoe Leskarates of Ashburnham and Meni Tzoulos of Leominster. The event also featured helpings of Slovakia, Greek lasagna. There was a performance by a Greek orchestra, and Mike Nelson cooked up Peters and beef for some of the hungry crowds. And John Kiosis of Gardner was throwing dollar bills at dancers from the Holy Trinity Flogger Dance Group as they performed. And here's the Fitchburg DPW weekly alerts. The Department of Public Works advises residents of the following work that will be done, weather permitting, during the week of September 17th. There's paving, Monday through Friday from 7 to 3 p.m. The Ringe Road at McKay School to John Fitch Highway, expect detours. Rollstone Road at Bridal Cross Condos to 5th Mass Turnpike. There's going to be replacement followed by pavement, pulverization, and grading. There's going to be street sweeping, Monday through Friday, 7 to 3 p.m. And there's touch-up sweeping throughout the